Hey, I just saw your comment, Sarah. Hey, happy Sunday. Happy Grandparents' Day. Happy Just Because We Want to Be Happy Day. I am so grateful. I am Coach Yolanda, owner of Evolving Spirit Wellness. This is the year of the inner child, Mama Meditations, all of that, all of that, all of that. I was going to talk about you today, Sarah. Hello, hello, hello. This beautiful soul reached out to me the other day, and it was a welcome surprise. How you doing? I'm so glad that you are here and that you got your notification. Okay, on break time. I love it. I love it. I'm telling you, our conversation, even though it was brief, was what I needed at the right time. So thank you, thank you, thank you for that. Um, as I said, this is the year of the inner child. So a lot of stuff is coming up, and my inner children have been tapping on my shoulder, stomping on my feet. And I'm so grateful that the source of love always answers when I am in need of a kind word, a kind gesture, or some motivation, inspiration. And you provided all of that. So thank you, Sarah. And I'm glad that you're here, even though you are working on a Sunday. That just shows that you are a dedicated lady. I don't consider this work, so I don't think that I'm working on a Sunday. This is actually quite timely, our topic about being by ourselves and being in isolation, because this is one of the weekends that I've had to myself. I didn't have grandbaby girl, and so this was her first week of preschool, and of course she got all of the preschool child germs, so she's feeling under the weather. So send my grandbaby some good healing energy so she can go to school tomorrow. Whew. And so I've been by myself. I went to teach a class yesterday, and afterwards I had time to myself, and I didn't really know what to do because those situations are so few and far between. So this is very timely that we're going to talk about isolation. We're going to talk about self reflection. We're going to talk about what that looks like in our 20s and 30s and how that might be showing up for us now. And you say, "Oh, I I brought the energy through the phone," because it really did shock me. I almost didn't answer the call. I was like, "Who is this? I don't know who this is." And I was led to answer the call. And I'm so grateful again that when love shows up, I now know how to answer. So thank you. Anyone else who is joining us live or on the replay, I love you too. I get so much energy from our Sunday meetings, and it sets my week off well, particularly when we are talking about inner child healing. It keeps me mindful. It keeps me mindful of giving myself grace, of being kinder to myself, of having so much more patience when I'm ready to erupt, when I'm ready to react to something. I think about these Sundays that we spend together, and I'm like, listen, you can't be out here telling people to get in contact and get in connection with their inner child if you're not doing that also. So we are supporting one another. Your comments, your questions, anything that comes up in the chat, just know that it can be seen by others if I choose to display it, or if it's on YouTube or Facebook. But we're a good bunch. I think there was only one time where there was some, I think it was one of those, robo whatever that popped up, and it shocked me. The conversations that have come up in these Sunday meetings have been so beneficial to this mission of inner child healing. And it's really about the healing. It's not about digging up all of your past traumas so that that becomes the motivation and inspiration for your behavior. It's let's look at what went on. Let's take some reflection about what went on in the past so that we can understand ourselves in a different way. Everything is a lesson. Everything that you have experienced, everything that you will experience is here to teach you something. And I know many of us would say, well, I don't want to learn that lesson in that way because it's hard, it hurts, it's heartbreaking, it's painful. I understand that. You understand that. As human beings, we are going to have experiences that rip us apart. As spiritual beings, we also have to keep in mind that there is a connection that is greater than our human limitations that we can tap into to have a greater understanding of our human experiences. Do not forget that you are a spiritual being expressing as a human. You are a spiritual being, and that means there are things that are higher than your human limitations that you can count on, that you can call on, that you can stand on, and that ultimately, when you feel like all else is lost, is going to be the only thing that you can go to. And so that is why we do the inner child healing. Forgive me for being so casual today, but like I said, this is my weekend to spend time with myself. And so there are things around the house that I want to do, outside of the house that I want to do, and I'm going to get to do them today. So, for many of us, we had to go back quite some ways to think about our 21 to 35-year age range. One of the dynamics of that developmental stage is this is where we start to separate. You may be separating from your families because the family dynamic is changing. Maybe you are moving out on your own. Maybe you've gone off to school and you did not return back home. Or maybe your thought process is different from your family of origin. Maybe you grew up in a household that had very strict rules. And now that you're an adult, you're like, I got some freedom. I'm going to start thinking for myself, doing for myself. So there is this separation that happens. And so, and that way, isolation feels like you're isolating your mind. I'm separating my mind from what was and what the beliefs of my family or my friends may have been to creating my own mindset. There are certainly all of these type of relationships that are changing. You may be starting a career, starting a job, starting some things in your life where you now have to figure out, how do I interact with people? I saw a video on Instagram that was a young lady. She might have been like 24, and she's like, I still need my mom to make my doctor's appointments, my dentist appointments. I still need her to find my birth certificate and all of those things. This age range is where a lot of that starts to separate. So you may feel isolated because now you got grown up responsibilities and you have to do things for yourself. You have to have those conversations that you may not have had in your teenage years. You know, you have to advocate for yourself in a way that you may not have had to do. A lot happens in this age range that feels like a pulling away of what was and a creation of what is, and it can feel isolating. So think about it in those terms as well. You could also be looking at your romantic and intimate relationships differently because everybody's asking you, when are you going to get married and have some babies? When are you going to settle down in this age range? You know, everybody wants to know what your life plan is going to look like. And you just got into this adulthood and everybody wants to know what it looks like. And so there may be that pressure of trying to create romantic relationships in a way that pans out for the rest of your life. And here you are 20, just experiencing life. Here you are 30, experiencing life in a different way. And you're supposed to, you know, figure out how the rest of your life is going to go. It can feel very isolating if you haven't had the developmental tools to make choices for yourself. One of the things that I'm seeing, because I work around preschoolers, is when, you know, parents are doing every single thing for their child and not giving them the opportunity and the experience to make choices for themselves. And it doesn't start in the 20s and 30s. It starts very, very early. That dynamic of, I'm going to do for my child so that my child doesn't have to go without, doesn't have to do without. But that could also be something that, you know, impacts the development of social skills, impacts the development of problem solving skills, all of those things that everybody has to learn. By the time you get to 21, you should have, the world will tell you at least, you should have developed a healthy sense of what appropriate choices look like, what appropriate choices feel like, how to problem solve, how to navigate systems in the world. And it can feel, if you did not have a great experience with those developmental skills, it can feel isolating. You could feel isolated in your peer group. It could feel like everyone else is so far advanced. Everyone else knows what they want to do with their life. Everyone else has this figured out. Why am I struggling? And this is not to blame your caregivers, your teachers. This is not the blame game. That's not the reason we do inner child healing. It's to figure out, why does my life look the way it looks now? And could it be possible that the way in which I developed and my experiences from the past are still coming up? And I want to have a greater understanding of why it is I respond to particular things in a way. Why am I triggered? Why am I afraid to do particular things? Why am I risky in particular areas of my life? All of those answers have a root, and the root cause can be found in our childhood experiences. And whether you want to believe it or not, the age range from 21 to 35 still has some element of childhood, and we are still childlike. I'm 52 and I'm still childlike because there are things that I have yet to experience. I don't know how I'm going to respond to them. I don't know how my past development is going to help me or hinder me because I haven't gotten there yet. There are particular things that will happen tomorrow in my life that I'm going to have to, that I will feel like a child because I've yet to experience them. I haven't had to make those choices, make those decisions. So if you think about it in that way, inner child healing isn't just about, your adolescence. It continues no matter what stage or age you find yourself in. Think of it in that way, that there are particular things where you may not have the maturity that you wish or desire to have because maybe you didn't have the experience. Maybe it's something new in your life. Heartache, heartbreak is always going to look different. No matter what that heartache or heartbreak is, it may have a similar components, but it's always going to feel different because you are growing, you are different. You are experiencing it at a different level. And so when we think about why people isolate, sometimes it's not your choice. Sometimes it's something that you learned because you believed it made you safe, it kept you protected, you saw other people in your life doing it. One of the things that is a natural instinct to all of us is self preservation. Humans are designed to protect themselves. The body is designed to protect itself. And so if we see something as a threat, then we will do what we need to do to preserve ourselves, to keep ourselves safe. And sometimes that means retreat. Sometimes that means isolate. Sometimes that means step away. And there are different ways that we can do that. We can isolate ourselves mentally, meaning we can disconnect from what we're thinking and what we're feeling. We don't want to think about particular things. We don't want to feel particular things. So we start to retreat. We start to spend more time by ourselves because we're not finding our tribe, so to speak. People want us to do things that don't align with us and the way that we think and the core beliefs that we have. So we may feel like the safest thing that I can do in this moment is to just be by myself. Is to not even engage in relationship with anyone, whether it's my family, my friends, even at work. I just come to work. I got my headphones on. I don't want anybody to talk to me because I don't want anybody disrupting my thoughts or disrupting my feelings. And sometimes, even in the workplace, sometimes when you have that type of mindset, it's a problem for people. All she does is come to work and goes home. She never socializes. She never joins in. That's a problem in some workplaces because they don't know how to read you. I was always under the impression work is for work and play is for play, but we have gotten to a point in society where that line is so blurred, but we're humans and we're supposed to interact with people. I just told somebody on Friday, I'm not going to go into any place in my life and be in a toxic environment. Doesn't mean that I'm fake and I'm phony, but I'm going to make my best effort to be pleasant, to be kind to everyone I come in contact with because that is my choice. I choose to be environments that are healthy, that are happy, that are peaceful, or as they say, kill them with kindness. And so when people, you know, are in environments and for whatever reason they feel the desire to be toxic or negative, I always combat that with some positivity. I'm not in the past, I would have been like, yeah, I can't mess with you. I don't get down with you. I'm not even going to speak to you. You don't even exist. That was me in the past. That didn't work out very well. It didn't allow me to learn how to work with people. It didn't allow me the opportunity to work on my social skills. If we just keep isolating, 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 soon the amount of people that we interact with doesn't even fit in that little box that we've created with ourselves and for ourselves. And again, we are human beings who were created to interact with one another. That's why we can communicate. That's why we got eyes and hands and all of these things, these senses that thrive on connection. When people who want to, go off the grid and live by themselves, something starts to happen to them. When you are spending so much time by yourself, something starts to happen to you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. It seems like it's more peaceful, but what you've done is you've created this box in this limited experience where only particular things happen. We were not designed to do that. And whatever your lesson of isolation was in your 20s and your 30s, is it still showing up now? Do you still find yourself retreating when interactions with other people become toxic or different? And we're going to talk about why isolating and self preservation are two very different things. There are requirements. If you desire to be in relationship with other human beings, there are requirements. Not everybody follows the requirements, not everybody understands the requirements, and not everyone can agree on what those requirements are. One of the requirements that I would think is most obvious is respect. We're required to respect one another. But we have so many conditions. Well, I'm not going to give you respect and you don't give me respect. Humans have created so many conditions in order to interact with one another. It's hard to keep up. Do we say hi? Do we not say hi? Do we look each other in the eye? Do we not look each other in the eye? And then there are those cultural differences where in some cultures it's disrespectful to look somebody in the eye. It's disrespectful to shake their hand. And so we have to navigate all of this. So whatever your relationship with isolation was in your 20s, how did you mentally isolate? Did you retreat? How did you physically isolate? Did you find somewhere to go where nobody could get to you? People are knocking on the door, ringing the bell, and you acting like you're not home? Or are there particular places that you would go where you felt like your authentic self? Because that can also be a form of isolation. We spend, our Monday through Friday in places and spaces where we feel like we got to be fake and phony. And then the 2 days that we get out of the weekend, if we're lucky, we get to be ourselves. That's one way we can mentally isolate and physically isolate. You put on, as some people say, you put on that drag that you wear Monday through Friday. You don't really dress like that. That's not really your personality, but that's what they require at the workplace. So that's what you put on. But when you are your best self, your most authentic self, you're a completely different human. That can also be like a form of isolation because you are not being your authentic self for the majority of your human experience. You're pretending. And so many of us are so good at that. We've learned that behavior. Pretend to play the game and the game will be easier for you. Or pretend to assimilate and you'll be more likable and the game will be easier for you. Some of us are spiritually isolated, where we think the only voice that we need to hear is our own, you know, thoughts, our own feelings. We don't want anybody else to intrude in what spirituality looks like for us. That can be very dangerous. You may start to believe that you yourself are the connection to your own spirituality. And next thing you know, you in a compound somewhere starting a cult because you have started to believe what you are telling yourself in isolation. So spiritual isolation can hurt. Sometimes people find that they need to isolate themselves spiritually, and we'll talk about what the difference is. If you've been hurt, if someone has damaged what you consider to be your understanding of spirituality or your connection to self, if you found yourself in places and spaces where you have felt manipulated or taken advantage of, you could feel like, I got to isolate myself spiritually. I don't want to share this part of myself with anyone because other people have used it to hurt me. That is an absolutely appropriate response to trauma. And I'm not here to tell anybody that you should stay in any place or space where you feel disregarded, disrespected, or unappreciated just because we're supposed to maintain connection. But there's a difference. And we're going to talk about that. Feeling emotionally isolated, I think, in my opinion, that is what many of us are experiencing right now. Mentally, we may be able to get our needs met. We get up, we go to work, we do, we're like robots. So mentally, we're able to think, we're able to do what we need to do, but emotionally, we are shut down. So shut down that we are not even feeling for ourselves. We don't know what we feel. We don't know what's coming up. We don't know how to respond. We don't know whether to cry, whether to laugh. And some of that could have happened in our 20s and in our 30s and even before that time. But in our 20s and 30s, when we're starting to feel like we can express ourselves fully, like we start to feel like I'm not under the watch of my parents, I'm not under the watch of my teachers in high school. I am a free, independent individual who can think and feel for themselves. We start to feel what self-expression really is like. Many people, young people, find that out when they go off to college. It's like, I can stay out as late as I want. I can speak up in class. I can have a debate with other adults. I'm being seen and heard for the first time. You also will find this in romantic relationships. When we're younger, if we get into those romantic relationships where it feels like we're being seen and heard for the first time, we are head over heels in love. We're not looking at no red flags. We're not paying attention to the things we should be paying attention to. All we know is we feel like this person sees us and hears us. And maybe it's because they're saying all the right words. Maybe they're being kind in ways that no one else has been kind to us. That love in your 20s and 30s, it can feel like for the first time, someone gets me. Someone gets me. And then you have that first heartbreak. And then emotionally, you start to isolate. I'm never going to give anybody my heart again. I'm never going to be fully invested in any romantic relationship, or I'm not getting into any romantic relationship. I, none of that is for me. It can happen. And many of us, and I will say not so long ago, I was one of those emotionally isolated people where I kept my feelings to myself. I certainly wasn't going to share them with another individual, particularly because I had been hurt in the past. And so that was my solution to creating safety for myself. But what I wound up doing is limiting my human experience. I came here to love. I came here to laugh. Came here to have, as they say, I'm not here. I may not be here for a long time, but I'm here for a good time. That can't happen if I'm not having healthy interactions with other people, if I'm living my existence where I'm shut down in particular areas of my life. That's not a full life. But who tells us that in our 20s and 30s? We think that's what we're supposed to do. Again, it can be based upon your experiences, not somebody else's experience, your level of consciousness, your level of awareness, your desires, things that are pleasurable to you, that are not pleasurable to you. All this is relative to you. So you have to ask yourself these questions. What was my relationship with isolation? How did I isolate when I was younger, my 20s, my 30s? Or if you're in that age range right now, how do you find that you are keeping yourself, quote unquote, safe from anyone that might be disrupting your peace, your freedom, the way you love yourself? Because there is a difference. There is a great difference. And we're going to talk about that. And feel free to comment about what it feels like for you. So, is it isolation or self preservation? For me, in the past, have been an isolator. I will tell myself, well, you're an introvert. You don't like to be around people. This is where you regenerate and restore your power. That's a bunch of bull crap. Do I desire to always be in social situations? No. I could do both. I could have a healthy balance of both. And I'm not saying for anyone who calls himself an introvert, sometimes we say that because it gives us an excuse to isolate. Sometimes we love to label ourselves particular things because then we don't have to be responsible for doing the opposite of that thing. So if I say I'm an introvert, don't expect me to be at the party. But if I say I'm an extrovert, you expect me to be everywhere. Sometimes we love to give ourselves labels because it, again, keeps us safe. And so I have at times called myself an introvert. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be holed up in my room 24 hours a day. I mean, it doesn't sound, unflattering. As we were going through the pandemic, I feel like I did quite well with the isolation that we all had to go through. For some people, it broke them. Some people did not do well with that, imposed isolation. Many relationships broke up because of that isolation, which again, everything is here to teach you something. So, what did you learn when we all had to be isolated? We all had to be, separated from each other in some form of fashion. Now, if you live in the house with a bunch of people, you weren't really experiencing isolation in the same way that someone who lives alone does. Many individuals who live alone, did not do well with the imposed isolation that we all experienced through the pandemic. And some of y'all who consider yourselves to be, extroverts, found out that that may not, be the truth. Some of us, some people did okay. It all depends upon your individual human experience, and no one else can interpret that for you, which is why I say you have to ask yourself the question: what was my relationship with isolation like when I was in my 20s and my 30s? Could I stay all day up in my room just listening to music all day and realize it's 9 o'clock at night and I haven't talked to anybody all day? I haven't talked to anybody on the phone. I haven't seen another human being. Sometimes it's like that. Again, sometimes it's because of the circumstances of life. You might live that type of lifestyle where you find yourself in isolation. You have to figure out what was your relationship like and the difference between isolation or self preservation, because we all need time to ourselves. And for me, this is how I determine, Yolanda, are you isolating or are you really restoring and entering into some self preservation? What's my attitude like? When I am isolating, I know that I'm avoiding a perceived negativity or toxicity somewhere external to me. But yet, I still want to know what everybody's doing. Or I have this commentary going on in my head. Oh, I would never go there. I'm glad I grew out of that. Or why are they doing it? I'm judging what other people are doing. I might be in my room, and some of y'all know what I'm talking about. I'm so happy I'm by myself and I ain't got to be around a lot of people. But yet I'm looking at what all the people are doing and judging and criticizing. Ooh, it's too many people in that house. I would never want to go to something like that. Oh my God, they all up in. If you are happy being by yourself, you don't have time to be judging and criticizing what other people are doing. Or here's another indication that you probably have isolated yourself to the point where it's really not a conscious choice and decision. It's something that you felt like you had to do when you stopped getting invited to places and now you feel offended. How many of us have experienced that? It's like they know you're not coming, but you still want to be invited. Why? You have made the choice to not show up. Why do you need people to invite you to places where you know you're not going to come? So if I don't get an invitation or something, I don't take it hard because y'all know I'm not coming. That sounds like a very smart individual. Why am I going to waste an invitation and call Yolanda to say to come when I know Yolanda's not coming? Because she may not do those things. I may not want to come. If it's dry, if the parking situation is not right, Don't even ask me. I'm not coming. Miss BD says, you use the introvert excuse for years. For years. And we wear it like a badge of honor. All I need is a good book and a glass of wine, and I'm fine. And that might be true. But if you find yourself living that existence, but also longing, and some of us, we have to tell ourselves the truth. How many times do we say, oh, I don't want this and I don't want that, but secretly in our heart, we know that's exactly what we want. I used to be one of those. I'm not trying to be in no relationship. And secretly in my heart, it's like, I would really like to be in a relationship. Those two things do not correlate. We could be out in the world telling people, I'm independent. I get to travel. I get to do whatever I want to do. I ain't tied down to anything. And secretly by ourselves, we're longing and hoping and desiring. That's not living authentically. If you're one way to the world, but in here, you're suffering because you know that's not the existence that you really want to have. That's another way that you can determine if what you've been doing is isolating yourself because you're trying to protect yourself. And trust me, if anybody has stepped outside of their house longer than 2 minutes, we all have very good reason to protect ourselves. It doesn't feel safe all of the time. But if it doesn't feel safe in here and it doesn't feel safe in here, it's never going to feel safe out there. If the limitations of your thoughts and your feelings are, I can only be safe within myself, it's never going to be safe out there for you. You're always going to be looking for danger. You're always going to be looking for the killer. You're always going to be looking for some doom, some gloom, or something to come into your experience. And because that's where your energy and your focus is, that may be what you experience because that's all you can think about. And that's another way to determine if you have been isolating yourself. Your focus is on what you're avoiding. That's all you can think about. The very thing that you said you don't want to have anything to do with has all of your time, all of your attention, all of the things, choices in your life are aligned with, I got to avoid this thing. That's another way to determine if you're self preserving or isolating. Another function of isolating yourself, you won't ask for help. You won't ask for help, or you wait until things have gotten so bad that then you're crying out. One of the developmental skills that we learn in our 20s and 30s is how do we get our needs met? Again, that is the age range when for most of us, our parents are no longer there doing everything for us. You may or may not be in a partnership where someone is doing everything for you. You've got to figure that out for yourself. How have you figured out how to get your needs met? And if your answer is, I do it for myself, I rely on me, I don't know how to ask other people for help, I don't know how to generate support. That's a better way of saying asking for help. How do you generate support? How do you facilitate support in your life? How did you learn how to do that in your 20s and 30s? If you never learned how to do it then, you're probably not doing it now. Hey, Miss Giselle, how are you? I'm so glad that you are here. So that may also be another indication that you've been isolating yourself to the point where you've lost or you never developed the skill to generate support in the areas of your life where we all need support. We all need mental support, spiritual support, physical support, emotional support. We are human beings. We need one another. Whatever I'm going through will somehow, affect you, whether it directly affects you or not. When you think about the people that you come in contact with and how they can change your mood. You get up in the morning and you're feeling good and you go to get your coffee and the person that's serving your coffee got a nasty attitude. Now you got a nasty attitude. Or somebody cut you off. Now you feel bad. Now that good, great energy that you had has been wiped out. We are influencing each other's energy all of the time. And so, if you've never learned how to facilitate that, how do I live amongst other people and still keep my own sanity? If you grew up in chaos as a child, that may have been what you learned to do: isolate. Maybe you ran somewhere else. Maybe you got a book. Maybe you lived in a fantasy world in your head because the reality that you were living in was too difficult. For many of us, the talents that we have now did not come from the talent fairy. It came from, I was living in a difficult situation and I had to learn how to preserve myself. So I found a love of reading, or I found a love of writing, or I created stories because the reality that I was living in was much too much. Some of us, you know how they say comedians and some of our best comedians had traumatic experiences growing up, and that's how they learned to escape. Many of us learned how to do some of the things that we do as adults because it was a form of escape when we were children. Not all, but some. And so, how did that help you develop a healthy sense of, how do I interact with other people without losing my mind, without feeling like I don't want to be bothered with anyone? When you get to that point of, I don't want to be bothered with anyone, you are probably creeping toward some isolation. Self preservation looks different. Self preservation comes when you have a healthy self concept of who you are. When you know how to create healthy boundaries that don't keep people out, but makes everyone aware of what you tolerate and what you don't tolerate. The example that I gave in the workplace, I have not always been great at creating healthy boundaries. I'm so grateful that I'm better at it. You know, if somebody comes to me with a complaint, my first thought is, well, what would make this better for you? How do we make this easier? I don't make it about me. I don't take it personal. It happens all of the time. So much so, as I was saying to my beloved the other day, maybe I set myself up to be the container for everyone's grief. But what people know in my workplace is, if they bring me something, I'm not going to criticize them. I'm not going to judge them. I'm going to ask them, well, what would make this better for you? And I'm not making any promises that I can do that. But let's work on that, because you complaining about it 20 million times during the day is going to impact me in one way or another. And I'm not allowing that to happen. So what can I do that's going to make this better for you? It ultimately makes it better for everyone. And it's always with a level of understanding, because I don't know what their experience is. So if someone comes to me and it seems like it's not a big deal, I don't know that it's not a big deal to them. I don't know what their life experience has been. I saw someone post the other day that everything is in trauma. I don't know that. I don't know what everyone's individual trauma is, and who am I to belittle someone else's human experience? I don't care if somebody stole your pencil when you were 4. I don't get to tell you, well, that's not that bad. I've heard worse. If it was traumatic for you, then it's trauma. And I'm going to treat it as such and say, well, what can I do to make it better? What can I do to support you? How can we turn this from you complaining to you feeling like you're being seen and you're being heard? Because ultimately, that's what every human wants in their interactions, in their human experiences. And it's not external validation, it's recognition that you and I are human and we are here to work together. I'm not here to harm you, and you better not be here to harm me, because that's not what I'm giving. And so, knowing that we deal with each other on a day to day basis, and you get to the point where you're like, you know what? It's time for some self preservation. I have a healthy self concept of who I am. I don't hate anyone. I don't dislike anyone, because I don't know everyone's life experience. There may be people that I don't particularly care to engage with, and I don't have to. But if I have to, I'm not going to be nasty about it. I'm not going to say, oh, this is the worst thing that ever happened to me, because I have a healthy self concept, healthy self esteem about myself. I'm not looking at anybody else. I'm not looking lower. I'm not looking higher. So that in those moments when I feel like I need to, have some time for me, it's not I'm running away from people. It's I'm filling myself up because I know I have to deal with you tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. And I want to do that in the best way possible. I'm taking care of me so that if the possibility exists that I got to take care of you, I can do that. Individuals who do a lot of self preservation, self reflection are less possessive. Again, I saw a young person say that because she was in a relationship with someone that she is entitled to their time, that they should not ever want to be alone. And I thought, yikes on bikes, that boy better run as fast as he can. I love this quote by Khalil Gibran. If you've ever read The Prophet, I suggest that as one of the books that I didn't know that I was going to need prior to my greatest grief. But I'm so grateful that I read it 3 times because there were some gems in that book that helped me put in perspective when my son Isaiah passed away, when my parents passed away. And one of the quotes from that book is, "For a love to grow through the test of everyday living, one must respect the zone of privacy where one retires to relate to the inside instead of the outside." We all have to have that zone of privacy where we can go and do some self reflection, some self preservation, some self healing, some self love, whatever you want to call it, restoring ourselves so that we can deal with one another. Because if we don't take that time, it's going to turn into a powder keg because we feel like we don't have ownership over our thoughts, over our feelings. And that's one of the differences between isolation and self preservation. The attitude and the perspective is different. It's not, I got to get away from these people because they make me crazy. It's, I want to go be with myself so that I'm able to deal with whatever comes. I want to fill myself up with so much love and peace and everything else that it takes for me to be a sane individual so that when I have my interactions with other people, I can be the best version of me. I can be the most authentic version of myself. And I'm more helpful and supportive to other people. I'm not looking at my fellow man, my fellow woman, my fellow however you choose to identify. I'm not looking at you as a problem or something I have to run from. I'm looking at you as what we are. We are all here, cohabitating, impacting each other. But if you don't learn that in your 20s and your 30s, you think everybody's out here to hurt you or harm you. Or the other extreme of that, you think everybody is your friend. I remember my mother used to say that all the time. You think everybody is your friend. And boy, was she right. I did. I thought everybody was my friend until I found out that was not true because I wasn't being a friend to myself. I didn't know that. I thought the people were supposed to give me the things instead of me creating the things and sharing it. Reciprocity with other people. And so I love this quote because for me, this is the difference between isolation and self preservation. I have a zone of privacy that I can go to where I'm reflecting on me. I'm not worried about what everybody else is doing. I'm not doom scrolling on social media, judging what everybody is wearing, what they're looking like and who they're with. I don't have time to do that. I'm focused on me. And so individuals who do that are less possessive. I'm not worried if my partner is doing things without me. I know that it's healthy for the relationship. I'm not worried if my kids decide they don't want to spend a particular holiday with me. This is what I want for them. I want them to have a life outside of my own. When you have healthy attachments to individuals and things, you're not possessive. I don't own people. I thought we abolished that a long time ago, but here we have people thinking that they own someone. Well, you and I are in a relationship and I need to know everything you're doing. I need to have the passwords to your phone. I need to. Good God Almighty. That's frightening to me. It's really, really frightening that in order for you to feel whole, you have to hold somebody else hostage. In order for you to feel safe and secure, you've got to know everything about the other person. Think about that. That happens in your 20s and your 30s where you're like, I want to know where he is. I want to know what he's doing. God help us if those of us who are of a particular age, if we had the technology that is available now, back then in my 20s and 30s, I would have had everybody's location. I would have wanted to know where you at, what you do. Oh my gosh. Back in the day, we just had to get in our car and drive around till we found their car. that's that's how we figured out and found where people were. We didn't have access to the resources that everyone has today, where everyone is spying on one another, because I need to know if you are that insecure, why are you even in the relationship? If you've got to keep tabs on somebody, why are you even in the relationship? That's a conversation for another day. But individuals who do a lot of self reflection are not possessive because they recognize that people need time to themselves, to restore themselves, to relate with themselves, to know, what are you thinking about? What are you feeling? How can I know what I'm thinking and feeling for myself if I'm always in your face? You may also find that when you enter into this space of self preservation and not isolation, you are more creative. When I am alone with my thoughts, I feel so much more creative than when I'm under the influence of everyone else. Now, I love to create with other individuals, but I also love the creative process that I have started for myself. I know what my process looks like. I don't want anybody else's influence, and it's difficult to do that when you're always interacting with other individuals. So if you know that part of your self care, self love, self preservation, whatever you want to call it, includes some creativity, then it's really not about you avoiding other people or pulling yourself away. It's about you spending time with you again to see what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and what is being created in this beautiful body of yours. You're more at peace. If you can create peace for yourself, you are not trying to have other people create peace for you. I love when my adult children come to the house, and I love when they're not here. Both of those experiences to me are peaceful. I'm not longing for one over the other. There is a healthy balance of both. I love when my house is filled up with people, and I love when it's not. I have no desire for one over the other because I found my balance. So I'm at peace no matter where I work in a child care center where there are babies crying all the time, and I'm still at peace because I know it's part of the environment. It's what's supposed to happen. I'm not feeling anxious. I'm not feeling insecure that I'm at peace. But that only comes because there's a healthy balance of me interacting with people, but also having time to myself. And so, some of the things, again, that we can do to make sure that we are not isolating over self preservation is continuously asking ourselves questions. Number one, last week we talked about, well, 2 weeks ago, we talked about intimacy. We talked about there nothing being wrong with you and what your relationship is with intimacy. Is this your time that you are spending with yourself, part of your intimacy plan? Is this where you're learning what you love, what you don't love? For those of you who are former clients of mine, one of the things that I would have all of my clients go through is if there were particular things that they desire to do, goals, we would start with the goal. What is the goal at the top? And then consistently keep asking yourself, why do you want that? And what is that going to give you? And what is that going to give you? And some of them hated that exercise, but getting to the root of what you desire, what you love, what your passion is, that is essential when you're doing some self reflection. When people are unclear or uncertain about what their purpose is, what their passion is, they probably haven't done a lot of self-reflection to even know what is pleasurable to you. What is the thing that makes your heart sing? If you don't know the language of your own heart, How is somebody else supposed to know? If you can't identify, if someone says to you, what things do you like to do? And you start naming some off brand, regular stuff instead of hitting on what it is you love to do most, where your attention and your focus is, you probably need some time and some self-reflection time, getting to know yourself. And so if the goal is to make more money, you ask yourself, and why do you want that? And then write all of the things down of why that is. And then once you write those things down, ask yourself the question again. And why do you want these things? And at the end of all of that, ask yourself, and how is any of this going to make you feel? If you can't connect to the feeling of the initial goal, then why are you doing it? Because somebody else told you to do it? Because you think that's what you're supposed to do? If it's really not connected to your heart space, why are you doing it? And that could be because in our 20s and 30s, most of what we're told to focus on is how you want to retire, how are you going to set up your life, how are you going to set up your family. No one tells us to stay connected to our heart in our 20s or 30s. They say you go out there, educate yourself, you go out there, be self-sufficient, make sure you get a good job so that when you retire and you stop working, you're able to take care of yourself. You're able to meet your basic needs. What about your emotional needs? What about your mental needs? What about your spiritual needs? How often are we having those conversations in our 20s and 30s? I believe that this generation coming up is having those conversations. Nobody had those conversations with me when I was younger. How about y'all? Those of you who are in my age range of the 40s and 50s, who had a conversation with you about knowing what makes your heart sing, about being creative, unless it was tied to making money. You know, our parents, God bless them, they came from a generation that maybe didn't have all of the resources that we had available. So, of course, their focus was you got to make some money. You got to take care of yourself. You got to raise a family. You got to do this. You got to do that. We no longer have to live an existence that looks like this with all of these abundant and amazing experiences that we can have, and that your heart does not have to be starved or limited, or that you don't have to give yourself and give yourself and give and give and give until there's nothing left for you. We do not have to have those types of experiences. And we certainly don't have to be in a position where we are isolating ourselves. If you isolate yourself now, how are you supposed to connect with the thing that has been looking for you since before you were born? All of the things that are in your heart that you desire, that you were created for, how are you supposed to find them if you're living a limited experience where you don't want to connect with anyone, you don't want to, have interactions? One of the things that I never really liked to do as a business owner was network. Oh, you got to network. Oh, you got to go out there and you got to find someone. And you never know where your next business deal is going to come from, because it always felt so forced and phony to me. I had an experience last week here in Delaware where musicians, artists come together to connect with one another. And not one person said networking, really. I mean, it was a networking experience, but it was really so, it just was so harmonious, and it didn't feel pressured filled. People shared their gifts with one another, supported one another, were inspired by one another, said, hey, this is the thing that I'm doing and I'm doing it over here. And other people are like, oh, I'm gonna come check that out, or I'm gonna come support you. I cannot stand business networking events because, again, they just feel so forced. And you have, hi, and what's your elevator pitch? And it just feels so forced and so phony. The 80s and 90s really did a job on us being phony and fake. I really hope we're moving toward more of a organic way of being that says, hey, I do this thing. If you like it, you could join me, or maybe we could do something together. That just seems so much better than, let me tell you all of my degrees and let me tell you all of my years of experience and the great things that we are doing and creating and impress you so that you would be willing to work with me or that you would be willing to give me some money. Whatever the reason for networking is. We don't have to do that anymore. When we have a healthy sense of self, our communication, our interactions with others can look differently. I'm not worried. Again, we can't be worried about what everybody else is doing when we have a healthy sense of who we are and what we are doing and who we are becoming. So, you expressing your true thoughts and feelings, knowing that they are necessary for your growth, requires you to be in relationship with other people. It is very easy to say that you have healed from something when you no longer are in that experience or in that environment. So for me, when I got divorced, I don't even know how many years ago, I felt like, well, I'm healed, right? I no longer live with this person. He no longer lives with me. I'm healed. Yeah, but you got kids together, so you still have to interact. Many of us think that because we've removed ourselves from an experience that we've healed from it. It is very easy to tell yourself you've healed from something if you have cut off access and you no longer have to interact. But here is what I know about life. It will give you the divine opportunity to show you if you are truly healed or not. And so many of the things that we think we are healed from, even if you never see that person again, it's going to come up. It's going to come up in another person in another way where you get to see, have you truly healed from that experience or not? It's going to always come up because the universe loves to give us divine opportunity to see our growth. And many of us are surprised that we are triggered by things that we thought we healed from. It's like, I thought I was more mature than that. And here I am being just as immature as I was in my 30s. Don't ever fool yourself in thinking that just because you've removed a particular person, place, or thing from your experience, that you have healed from it. There may still be some work to be done. And when you are self reflecting, you get to see those kind of things. Everything is a lesson, and healing is a group sport. Healing done in isolation ain't really healing. You've just removed the external. You've removed the external irritant. It's just like when you feel sick and you take some over-the-counter medication. You've masked the symptoms, so you think, "Oh, I'm no longer sick," only to find out 3 hours later, when that medicine wears off, you're still sick. You haven't healed anything. You've just masked the irritant. The irritant is no longer bothering you. You got comfortable. You think you're healed until it wears off or shows up in another form. That is why we do self preservation, self healing, self love, self reflection. And so, one of the things that I love to engage in, other than meditation, is journaling. Now, someone just did a video on people who buy journals and then never complete them or never write all in them before they buy another journal. That would be me. I got so many journals around here, and I'll pick up an old journal and be like, "Oh, girl, you only wrote in 3 pages of this journal." But the story continues, and I can always go back and look at where my headspace was and where it is now. Facebook memory loves to do that too. I cringe at some of the things that I had said 10 years ago, 11 years ago. I'm like, I'm so grateful that I'm in a different place. That's why journaling is good, for you to do some self reflection, because you can go back and see what was. One of the things that I like is, and some of you may have heard of it, the Artist Way, the Morning Pages Journal. There are questions in here that you can ask yourself and then write. I don't write in this book. I write in my journal. I take the question from the book and then I'll write in my journal to give me a prompt. Sometimes you might need a prompt. Sometimes just some free flowing writing is enough for you to express whatever you are thinking and feeling. Get that stuff out. Take a look at it. Tell yourself the truth so that the you that you are displaying out is the same you that you are connected to in here. So that the time that you are spending with yourself is well spent and not spent judging, criticizing everybody else for living their life in the way that they have chosen to live their life, so that you're not giving all of your attention to the things that you say you want to avoid. I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to be harmed. I don't want to be taken advantage of. I don't want to be unappreciated. And yet, that's where I'm spending all my time, looking for those places and spaces where that's happening, judging people and saying that, well, my mama is doing this or my brother was doing this. Self preservation is about you preserving the you that you desire to be. It is not about you escaping some evil villain. The villains are going to be out there. We don't have to engage with them in the particular way that we've been engaging with them when we are creating a healthy us. That's where my time and attention is going to be, on me. And it sounds like it's selfish, but it's not. It's for the betterment of us all. When I am healthy and whole, I can be healthy and whole on the outside in my interactions with other people. That's a good thing. When I feel bad about myself, negative about myself, that's what I'm giving off. Or if I'm not, it's very fake. It's not sustainable. I might be appearing to be happy Monday through Thursday, and then you catch me on a Friday, and you're like, what is that? We can't afford to do that to ourselves anymore. We can't afford to shortchange this life that we have been given. None of us knows how much time, how much space, how much experience we are going to have if we are not doing what we need to do to love ourselves, to preserve ourselves, to restore ourselves, to make sure that we have a healthy concept of who we are. If someone were to ask you, who are you? And you start with, well, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a this. Those are great and wonderful things to be. Today is Grandparents' Day. I love being a grandparent, but that's not all that I am. If you ask me who I am, I'm going to tell you what's in here, not the label that has been bestowed upon me because of someone else's actions. I didn't become a mother all by myself. I didn't become a wife or ex wife all by myself. All of those things were connected to other people. I need to have a healthy sense of who I am as I am. And then I can have a better understanding of who I am in every relationship that I engage in, so I don't lose myself, which is another thing that can happen to us in our 20s and 30s. We lose ourselves in relationships. We could lose ourselves in family relationships, romantic relationships, work relationships, because we're thinking that those things are going to fill us up. And then we find out they were never designed to do that. If y'all can remember the card that I posted a couple of weeks back, relationship was never meant to be a device for finding sources for love. Relationships were designed to be holy. Relationship is where we go to be sacred and holy with one another, not where I come to take something from you or you take something from me. I'm here to share. And I trust that that is what we are doing with one another. I hope that's what we're doing. So let's take a deep breath before we leave one another. Because wouldn't it be a shame to be in each other's presence and not connect in a way that serves both of us instead of me just running my mouth for an hour? So let's take a deep breath. Connecting to your breath is also one of the great things that you can engage in when you're by yourself. You ever just notice your breathing pattern? So much so that when it's off, you know it's off. When you know you are not breathing in the way that you typically breathe, knowing that means that you are so connected to your body that you can tell when there's a slight variation of something different. You don't have to wait till your whole body's in pain and you can't move. You know it Y'all see how my straps are not right. That means one of my shoulders is higher than the other. I got to figure out what's going on. So let's take some deep breaths so we can connect to our body in this moment where many of us, if we are willing to admit, have been isolating ourselves because we need to feel safe. We want to feel that the experiences that we are having are not harming us or hurting us. We want to feel safe. No matter what chaos may be going external to our lives, we need the chaos that's inside our lives to quiet down. And we can do that by breathing. Yes, Giselle, reset and awareness, becoming so aware when something is out of balance that we are more prone to do something internally instead of externally. That we are willing to say, let me go within so that I never have to go without. Let me go within and connect with my heart in this right now moment and ask my heart, what do you need from me? Or what am I telling myself that I don't have that I can create beginning in this moment? If I'm telling myself that I don't have enough love, how can I create that for myself? If I'm telling myself that I don't have enough time, that I'm not spending enough time with myself, how do I get to the business of creating more time for myself so that the time that I spend with others is well spent, balanced, healthy, and whole? Am I willing to admit that my safety net includes me shutting other people out? Am I willing to admit that my safety net is really not keeping me safe at all, but is keeping my life experiences very limited? Am I willing to admit that I have learned in the past that it's best to not share anything about myself so that I don't get hurt or harmed or manipulated? Or have I learned that I have such a healthy sense of who I am, you couldn't manipulate me if you tried? Because I am aware of how to create healthy boundaries for myself that include a consequence if you cross my healthy boundary, and that I keep that consequence. That working inside of me in this moment is a sense of healthy integrity, focus, discipline, where I am taking care of me before I take care of anyone else. Because I know that doesn't rob the people that I love. It actually gives them the best version of me possible. And that is what a healthy relationship looks like, where everyone is giving and receiving, and no one is depleted or taking too much. Am I willing to look at my past so that I can see how it's showing up in this right now moment, where the core beliefs of being safe have run rampant in my life to the point where it's impacting my relationships? People are not getting the full me. They may be getting 40%, on a good day, 60%. And if people do not get the fullness of who I am, then I'm robbing them of the experience of my greatness. Mm. We are so incredibly amazing. And it would be a crime for any single one of us to leave this earth without expressing that fully. Last week, we talked about that there's nothing wrong with you. If we can get our minds to believe that, and start living from a place of authenticity to say, this is who I am. And I'm not worried about whether you like it or not. Because what's wrong with you? Why would you not? Why would you not love how great and unique and dynamic I am? But for the fact that maybe you don't love yourself fully. And so if we have a bunch of individuals running around and none of us are loving ourselves fully, then guess what we're going to do? Judge and criticize everyone else too, because we're judging and criticizing ourselves. I am not worried about what other people are doing in their life because I recognize I don't know everything about them. I have no idea what it takes for you to be you, and you have no idea what it takes for me to be me. But this is what I do know: we all have a lot of stuff that we are healing from, and it's not easy. And like I said, healing is a group sport. I am interacting with individuals every day. And if I show up in a particular way, it impacts them. If I respond in a nasty way, it impacts them. I don't know how great or how small, but I know if that's the energy that I put out, I have now contributed to the negativity that exists in the world. I'm not trying to do that. Or as my spiritual mama says, not on my watch. We're not doing that. Ask Ask Froxy says, thank you for the kind words, calling me a wise woman. Yes, we are loved and born worthy. I don't have to wait for anybody to tell me what my value is. I don't have to wait for anybody to rate me, to say, oh, you deserve this, you deserve that. I know what I deserve. I give it to myself. And I interact with individuals who give it to themselves and are willing to share with me. I'm not trying to take anything from anybody. I'm here to, reciprocate. I believe that's what we're all here to do, but we cannot do that if we don't take some time for ourselves, or if the time that we are taking for ourselves is really isolating and keeping and withholding. So many of us are out here withholding love. We need more of it. So why are you withholding it? Why are you saying things like, I'm not trying to do this and I don't want to do this because so many people have hurt me? Do you know that one of the best things that you can do for heartbreak is to give more love? It sounds crazy, right? It sounds like that's the last thing that I would do. When you are in breakdown, when you are heartbroken, when someone has taken from you, one of the best things you can do to heal is to give more. Giving in places and spaces that you know it's going to be received differently. Differently. That's why I like working around kids, because they don't have no hidden agenda. They are not coming to take anything from me. The only thing they want is a smile, is a laugh, is for me to be goofy. If that is the only thing that I have to give for them to feel good about themselves, it's not too much. That's why I really like working around kids, because they're not coming to manipulate. Now, sometimes they say particular things because they know Miss Yolanda have stickers. Miss Yolanda might, let them color or do something. But for the most part, we came into existence not looking to take from anyone. We came into existence looking to get our needs met. And then we learned, hey, I have something to offer and give. And I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to express what I'm thinking. I'm willing to express what I'm feeling. But if you did not have the healthy support that we all need to allow that to happen, you may not have learned that that is what we're here to do. And so we're all still learning. What does that look like for me? What does that look like for you? Because it's always going to look different. Hey, my love. It's going to look different for all of us. I love the fact that we all have similar experiences, but it's still unique to each and every single one of us. As I said earlier, I have no idea the impact of particular things in your life. Maybe you didn't never learned how to drive a car. Maybe you never learned how to ride a bike. Or maybe you learned how to do things that I don't know how to do. I don't know how that impacts you. So how can I sit in judgment of, oh, that's not traumatic? Oh, that's not a big deal. If it's a big deal to you, then damn it, it's a big deal. And if you are willing to share with me that it's a big deal, then I don't get to diminish that. But I hope that you find a way to be with yourself, to think about what you've experienced, to see it in a different way, to see it in a different consciousness, so that it doesn't limit your human experience now. What a crime it would be if we allowed the things from our past to limit our self expression now. I'm not doing it. I know that there are things from my past that I didn't ask for, that were done without my consent, without my permission, without anybody asking me how I felt, how I thought. I'm not going to let those things stop me now from being the greatest version of myself that I came here to be. And I hope that the same is true for you. I hope that as you move through this week, you start to see, oh, that looks like some isolation going on, and reframe it and say, no, I need to restore myself. When you're thinking about your self care, your self love, whatever you want to call it, I hope that it also includes interaction with the people that you love, that you feel safe with, that you feel like you have created a holy relationship with, because that's what relationship was designed to be: holy and sacred. And if you find yourself in relationships where that is not happening, then you have to ask the question, why do I continue to engage in experiences that are not supporting my growth, my healing, my well being, my mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual wellness? Why? And the answer may be rooted in your childhood experiences, so you can see it differently. Because as we said oh so long ago when we started this journey, children are always innocent. And I know that there's going to be somebody, but what about this and what about that? Let me tell you something. No child comes into existence wreaking havoc. But if you grow up in chaos and confusion and all kind of crazy stuff, that's exactly where you're going to be put your focus. And before we end, that brings me to a thought. I met a young man yesterday. I don't know much about him, but I know in the short amount of time that I spent with this young man that he needs good light, he needs good energy sent his way. Um, I am thinking of him. So if you join in my thoughts, then that will be sent to him as well. He's maybe 10 years old. And I gather he has seen and heard some things in his short time here on earth that have greatly influenced a lot of his behavior. And so I'm praying for that baby. Join me in praying for him. You don't need to know his name or anything else other than that there is a 10-year-old baby, because that's what he is, who is in need of some guiding light and some prayer. And I'm already believing that he will receive whatever he needs for his greater good. And it's just another reminder that children are truly innocent, and we all come here as blank slates, and things get written, and we absorb particular things, and it creates thoughts and feelings and behaviors that sometimes even exceed our level of maturity. And so I pray for him and all children. Many of kids in the United States here started school either last week or this week. And so let's send them all a hedge of protection, that they make it through this school year without harm coming to their mental, emotional, and physical bodies. That those whose responsibility it is to care for them do so from a place of love, and that whatever experiences that they have, that they don't impact them in such a way that they feel poorly about themselves. That is my hope for the young man that I met yesterday, and all of the children that we come into contact with, and all of the children that are living within us. All of the children that are living within us. And so I hope this week you connect with your inner children, and give them that same grace and love. And we'll do this again next week. I'm so happy to see some new folks, some people from the past, Thank you, thank you, thank you, as always. That is so absolutely beautiful. Yes, may all of the angels gather around him. Um, and I'm grateful to be in a position where if you see it, if you're ever in the position where you see something of concern, do what you can spiritually, do what you can physically, do what you can mentally and emotionally, because you know what it feels like to not have those protections. We all know what it feels like to not have them. So if you can provide them in the most appropriate way possible, please do so. I love y'all. I love your inner children. I know that your inner children love me too, love mine too. You are so welcome. And I hope that you have a week filled with, hey, Miss Erica. I hope you have a week filled with self preserving experiences only. Find your zone of privacy where you can retire to so that you get to relate to whatever is going on internally. And if you feel so led to share this with someone else, I would appreciate that too. Love y'all. Have an amazing rest of your week on purpose. And please just be good to one another and be good to yourself. Love you. Bye.